the Mondragon Cooperative Corporation. The essentials of the Mondragon story are simple. Mondragon is a small town in the Basque region, mainly engaged since the Middle Ages in producing steel. The regional economy was devastated in the 1930s by the Spanish Civil War. Poverty and massive unemployment remained endemic well into the 1950s. At that point, a remarkable parish priest, Don José María Arizmendiarrieta, prompted a handful of townspeople to establish an industrial cooperative, ULGR, using hand tools and sheet metal to manufacture paraffin-fired heating and cooking stoves for the local market. What has developed from that small beginning is a group of more than 100 manufacturing and service cooperatives, with a workforce of 21,000 members and a 1991 turnover of 315,172 million pesetas, up 8.8% on 1990, which was in turn a 15% increase on 1989. No Mondragon worker has ever been made redundant, and more than a quarter of the group's output is exported. The success of the Mondragon stems in part from the fact that every worker is a stakeholder, who shares equally in the profits, and, on occasion, losses, of the cooperative of which he is a co-owner. His rights as a member include participating directly in the making of the policies of the cooperative, which then delegates the day-to-day conduct of its affairs to a manager hired for the purpose on contract. Members' entitlements, and the obligations which go with them, are taken seriously. However, if the story had no more to it than that, the Mondragon cooperatives might, like some, but by no means all worker-owned cooperatives and companies in other countries, have had a short lifespan, or failed to achieve acceptable rates of growth. The key difference, over and above the checks and balances designed into the structure of the cooperatives by Arizmendiarrieta, is that, shortly after the inception of the first cooperatives, they launched a bank, the Caja Laboral Popular. The Caja Laboral Popular, now the 13th largest savings bank in Spain, with a staff of 1,321 worker members, 201 branch offices and assets in excess of $3 billion has made the Mondragon cooperatives capital self-sufficient, and equipped them with comprehensive financial services and skills. It is a support or secondary cooperative, governed jointly by representatives of its staff and affiliated industrial or primary cooperatives. The bank in turn has given rise to further support cooperatives. For example, since members of cooperatives are classified by Spanish law as self-employed, and are therefore ineligible for pensions, health care and other social security benefits, the group has had to develop a social security system of its own, through the Lagan Aro Support Cooperative. The Akerlin Research and Development Support Cooperative keeps the group at the cutting edge of technological and scientific advances, and has specialized recently in numerically controlled machine tools, artificial intelligence and robotics. The group's University of Technology, the Escola Politecnica, is a support cooperative, as are its School of Business Administration, Adelora, and its 40-odd Hezabite El Cartier primary and secondary schools. Students taking courses at the Escola Politecnica can if necessary pay their way as members of a cooperative of their own, a la Coop, whose products include teaching machines. The Mondragon Group includes finally 6 construction cooperatives, 7 agricultural cooperatives, 10 housing cooperatives and 271 Urowski cooperative supermarkets and other stores. Following the establishment of ULGR in 1954, the Mondragon cooperatives experienced spectacular growth. The expansionary phase then ground to a halt in the 70s, in the face of the first oil price shock, and the onset of a recession which was experienced far more keenly in Spain than in most other parts of Europe. Faced in the 80s with continuing financial stringency, the group conducted an exhaustive reappraisal of its position, followed by a root and branch restructuring which once again placed its activities on a secure foundations, while preserving intact its cooperative guiding philosophy, principles and structure. The success with which the membership was able to work its way through to agreement on the necessary changes is an object lesson in the capacity of ordinary people to adopt and adhere to difficult decisions which they have been enabled to understand and own. As stakeholders, the Mondragon workers expect high standards of wealth creation from those to whom the governance and management of the cooperatives is delegated. Unlike shareholders in conventional corporations, they are in a position both to monitor performance directly on a day-to-day basis, and develop informed views about the need for improvements and how they can be brought about. The outcome has been seen widely as an institutionalization of entrepreneurship. Even so, the concern of state socialist critics such as Beatrice and Sidney Webb, that the interests of producer cooperatives would necessarily be incompatible with those of consumers, and therefore of the community as a whole, has proved to be unfounded. The difference is owed substantially to the adherence of the cooperatives to Arizmendiarrieta's principle of equilibrio, of balance in the relationship of one cooperative with another, of industrial cooperatives with support cooperatives and of cooperatives both individually and collectively with the communities of which they are a part. As the Cornell University scholars William and Kathleen Foote White have written following a definitive 17-year study of Mondragon, in the discussion of important decisions, the word equilibrio appears again and again as the justification for any action proposed. The basis idea is that life in a cooperative should not be carried on as if it were a zero-sum game in which some win and some lose. There must be a balancing of interests and needs. We hear it said that technological imperatives must be balanced with social objectives and that the financial needs of the firm must be balanced with the economic needs of members. A further American writer, Roy Morrison, sees equilibrio as the key to a successful integration of human freedom and community. Tested against the principles of cooperation, democracy, voluntarism, autonomy, equity, mutuality, universality and the capacity to evolve, Mondragon emerges with flying colors. Economically, the story is similarly impressive. The 90s find the Mondragon cooperatives once again undergoing expansion. Earnings and exports are up. New markets are being acquired. A random selection of current products includes industrial robots, heavy earth-moving machinery, tugs, fishing boats, and other small ocean-going vessels, buses and motor coaches, machine tools and hydraulic presses, refrigerators, washing machines and other white goods, furniture and hi-fi systems. As from the inception, productivity of the cooperatives has been higher by far than that of comparable private sector businesses in nearby areas, and signs of dysfunction such as absenteeism are spectacularly fewer. Overall, wealth has been created. Jobs have been provided for workers who would otherwise be unemployed. Household purchasing power has increased and the regional economy has been stimulated. In 1991, in the face of continuing recessionary conditions, the Quadrilateral Popular lifted its level of deposits per worker member by 11.45%, its earnings per worker member by 13.2% and its profits by 14.8%. Clearly somebody is doing something spectacularly right.